Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 83, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, February 10th, 2023. Thank you for joining me here on episode 83. Great number, a great year, and I wish I could just chit-chat more with you all, but we got to dive right into it. I hope you all have had a good week so far, and I hope your weekend coming up is amazing. We're starting to, it's February, and it's, still pretty cold at times, but we've had some good weather here and there. And, we're starting to get into the bulk of the year where more and more events are going to be held outside or a mixture of both. And we're really starting to gear up now. But yes, I hope you enjoy your weekend, whatever you choose to do. First, we're going to talk about some international news that I haven't talked about yet on the podcast, just in case you all haven't heard or haven't seen an update. As of this recording, unfortunately, the story in Turkey and Syria after a massive earthquake just continues to get worse. Thankfully, there are some good stories of miraculous recoveries of people and other folks getting saved, but the numbers are staggering. Tens of thousands of people who lost their homes in this catastrophic earthquake have, had to do things like huddling around campfires, and it's also bitterly cold there, according to reports. They're also clamoring for food and water. This was all this. These numbers you're hearing come from Thursday, which was 3 days after this huge earthquake hit Turkey and Syria that left 20,000 dead. And unfortunately, that number continues to rise as they continue to dig through the rubble. If you're interested in helping, there's several organizations out there. One that people always think about is Red Cross. You can also go to rescue.org or World Central Kitchen, which is wck.org. They are all doing different things for people in that area. So if you want to help out, those are some resources, but I encourage you to look up others that are out there. If you want to do some checking into how that kind of money is spent with these organizations, if you want to do that background work on that, by all means. But those are just a few examples. All right, bringing it back here to South Carolina, let's move forward with some updates from the Alec Murdaugh murder trial. Witness testimony in the trial was interrupted on Wednesday after a bomb threat was called into the Colleton County Courthouse. Court officials said that the call came from an unknown number and claimed that there was a bomb in Judge Clifton Newman's chambers. The building was cleared for over 2 hours as law enforcement swept the scene. I'm just wild stuff. I think most people assumed there wasn't any danger. Obviously, you have to take these things seriously, and they did. Yeah, but because I think in the back of everyone's mind, they're like, this is probably a hoax. It made it an entertaining in some ways scene and just, you see it, you're like, this is wild. This massive case is going on, this trial, and every day there's new information coming out, and all around the nation, people are interested. And then just add yet another twist and turn to what's already been a bizarre story with this, hoax bomb threat being called in and delays the trial for a little while. In any event, law enforcement, as I mentioned, determined there was no danger, it was a hoax, and the court went back in session. So far there's no further information as far as if police have leads or anything like that as to who made the call. But back to the trial itself, before the bomb threat, the jury was hearing different types of testimony. The financial stuff was still going on, with people talking about money that Alex has either allegedly or been proven to steal or has stolen. And also just people who knew about maybe some troubles he was having and things of that nature. In addition to that, they got back to the crime itself, away from motive. They had a gunshot residue on the stand. A gunshot residue expert on the stand. This person analyzed a blue raincoat. That's also become kind of a point of contention. But they analyzed a blue raincoat that was seized from Murdaugh's parents' home. She identified what she described as a substantial amount of presumptive residue on the inside of the jacket, but could not definitively say when or how it got there. So why are we looking at this blue raincoat? We haven't talked about it yet in the podcast, really. A witness had said that they saw Alec with the blue raincoat. It was rolled up. And this was about a week after the murders of his wife and son, Maggie and Paul. He was going to his parents' house. Someone saw him with this like rolled up blue raincoat, and he had brought it upstairs and stored it there. So when that came out, police found it, kind of rolled up or kind of smushed, definitely looked like it was stashed real quick. So they had it tested, and so what we learned from that was yes, there was gunshot residue, a substantial amount. There's all sorts of questions, and it's tough because this is something that was found a week later. Who knows where that gunshot residue could have come from? The implication was that maybe a gun was stored in there at some point. So that's what the theory is. Where is that gun? So far, no evidence of that has been presented. But it's I think it's just another circumstantial thing that you can add to the pile. So, all right, what else did they have from this gunshot residue expert? Well, she also said 3 particles were lifted from Alex's white shirt that he wore that evening when he was speaking with police. 3 particles were found on shorts from that night. However, no particles were found on his shoes. She said they did find 1 particle on Alex's right hand. So basically saying that wasn't significant, not necessarily that it's not significant in the sense of this crime and the case, but more so like generally when they find gunshot residue, there's a lot more of it. And, a lot of the talk has been, well, maybe Alec, cleaned up because we've talked about in the previous episode. So I don't want to get too much more into it for those who listen, but, there's talks about how he changed clothes and it looked like he was wearing really, really clean outfits. And so that might make sense if he did commit these murders, why just little particles were found, not like a big, like the clothes you might have been actually wearing, it might be completely different story. Again, this is just based on where the prosecution is going with this. In addition, they did find 1 particle on the buckle of the seatbelt in his car that he was driving that evening as well. So there's that. Again, just like everything else in a circumstantial case, it was circumstantial evidence, but certainly interesting to know that some gunshot residue was indeed found on his clothes, on his hand. Not a lot of it, but some. But a lot was found in this random blue raincoat that he brought to his parents' house a week after the murders and stashed there. So definitely looks suspicious, but we'll see what the jury thinks, of course. That wasn't the only thing that's happened over the last couple days as far as evidence. An electronics engineer and automotive forensic expert with the FBI also took the stand this week. He talked about location data from Alex SUV, the car I just mentioned he was driving on the night of June 7th, 2021, the night of the murders. This person testified that when he was examining the data from Alex's car, he ran into something that he has never seen before, and that's that the data was encrypted. So they have never, when they've tried to get like GPS info and other data from, newer model cars, they've never run into someone having that data encrypted on their vehicle. So that's really interesting, regardless of, where this case goes. The FBI apparently had to write a program from scratch just to extract the data because, again, they'd never seen this before. It took them a year to do that. And after that, all that work, they found out that there was no location data. So interesting that this vehicle was encrypted. It's never been seen by the FBI before, who I'm sure has done a lot of cases involving pulling data from vehicles. And then when they finally get in there, there's no location data. So why is that? Is it automatically deleted? So that whole setup I find really fascinating. Again, even if Alec didn't commit these murders, why would you have that? That just what are you trying to hide? I don't. It's just very, very, very interesting, I think. So I'm curious what you all think about the case so far. My personal opinion, which doesn't mean much as far as court cases. I'm no expert, but to me, and I know there's already a little bias because to me it felt like, even though I did leave room for doubt before hearing all this evidence and stuff officially, to me it seems like Alec did this. And the more I watch the court case, the more it's like reinforcing my belief. Now, again, that's just me giving you the background, so as if to say, hey, I'm admitting my bias in this scenario. Maybe I'm looking for things because I've already decided he probably did it. Uh, but I'm not basing this on any background information or inside info or anything like that. So I just want to just say completely my opinion based on nothing more than what I've seen at the trial and things of that nature. But we'll see. As of this recording, that I feel like is the most important information from the trial. If something big happens after I record, I'll be sure to fill you all in on Monday when we have the next podcast episode come out. In local sports news, the Charleston Battery and the Charlotte Football Club announced on Thursday that their preseason exhibition that was scheduled for tomorrow, February 11th, in Mount Pleasant, it has been relocated to Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. The reason for that is expected severe weather has been forecasted in the Charleston area for tomorrow. So they're going from the soccer stadium in Mount Pleasant to the football stadium in Charlotte. It's going to be quite the venue for them to go to. And it is probably the biggest stadium that they have played in this league. I know these guys play on other teams, some of them in other countries and things like that. But as far as the Battery is concerned, this is a pretty big venue. The clubs agreed to move the contest, once they decided it was reasonable caution for player and fan safety with expected bad weather coming in. And they wanted to make sure they still were able to play this match and, get them the opportunity to get some extra practice in against actual competition as they're getting ready for the 2023 season. The match will now kick off at 3 p.m. and will be open to the public on a limited basis. So if you're interested making the trip up to Charlotte, you may be able to see the game. Information on ticket availability for traveling Battery fans was going to be released through the Charleston Battery, so check their website and social media accounts for updates on that if you're interested in making the trip. Now to politics and what legislation is working its way through our legislature. And it certainly seems like South Carolina is looking to bring us into the past, not into the future like other places try to do. You will hear some of these things and you might be forgiven if you're thinking, wait, is he talking about some historical court case? There's no way. Yeah, unfortunately, this is current news. So let's get into it. First, Republicans in the South Carolina House approved a bill that allows parents to sue any public school district they accuse of teaching prohibited racist concepts. It additionally threatens to withhold thousands to millions of taxpayer dollars for any violations. So Democrats railed against this measure, saying it's going to bully teachers into whitewashing the ugly parts of the state and the nation's history for fear of being sued. While Republicans countered that the bill is designed to ensure that students are given the facts instead of opinion. So that's what the argument is from both sides. The legislation was passed 83 to 34, which was all along party lines. That happened late on February 8th after hours of debate. They also read the entire bill from start to finish by request of one legislator. Apparently, there's a rule where if this request is made, it has to be done. So they were there for a long time. This legislation, in addition to the things we've already talked about, it also includes an amendment requiring any changes made to curriculum or instructional materials after the semester starts has to be posted on the school's website at least 3 days before they're used in the classroom. So if there's some kind of change in topics of conversation, teacher has to submit that to the school or school district, which that then has to be posted on the website 3 days before the teacher talks about it. So some people, of course, had some objections to this because, things change, of course, and it seems silly that this would be a requirement. But also, teachers aren't always just talking about history. So, for one legislator used the Chinese spy balloon that was shot down last weekend off the coast of Myrtle Beach as an example, saying that this would prevent teachers from incorporating current events into their discussions, which is a perfectly normal thing that people do. And again, not even if they don't give an opinion or anything, it's just introducing material. You can't do it if students are what are we going to do if students ask questions about something? Oh, sorry, I can't answer that for 3 days. I mean, it's ridiculous. Another ridiculous part of this is that one of the amendments is that private schools are purposefully exempted from the bill's requirements. So as we push towards this, well, not we, but the Republicans here in the state push towards the voucher program, hope in their hopes of pushing more people to private schools if that's what they want to do. That no surprise that private schools are exempt. Some Democrats tried to say, well, let's at least hold schools that take funds from, the state. Uh, at least say they also have to go by these standards, but it was shot down. In addition, something else that was also shot down was an effort by the Democrats to require that repeat complainers would have to start paying for the district's time after making multiple accusations that were deemed frivolous. Republicans rejected that one too. So if some parent, and I'm not even talking about a reasonable, it seems this is going to go through. So a reasonable a complaint from a parent. We're not even talking about that. This is someone like abusing the system, someone who's not in touch with reality and claiming certain things are racist or were not posted at the right time, or says that things like the 2020 election was stolen. If it's taught that it wasn't stolen and someone complains about it, and so someone who's doing these frivolous things and wasting the district's time and potentially money should be held accountable, is what the Democrats were thinking. Well, Republicans said, nah, we're not going to do that. So that's where we're at with this whole, panic over CRT and other things that aren't happening in the state. But we're still pushing further in the past. Just you wait. Other entities in the state are trying to keep things current. For instance, the South Carolina Supreme Court denied a petition on Wednesday to rehear the Fetal Heartbeat Law. Back on January 5th, the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled that the so-called Fetal Heartbeat Bill that was initially signed in 2021 by Governor Henry McMaster is unconstitutional. They have decided, McMaster, Attorney General Alan Wilson, wanted to have this reheard. They didn't agree with the decision. Well, the court said, no, we're cool with our decision. Your petition's denied. So currently, it is still legal to get an abortion in South Carolina up to 22 weeks of pregnancy. Now, we'll keep you updated on that because the plan from McMaster and the Attorney General has always been to keep pushing this higher and higher, potentially to the U.S. Supreme Court. So we'll keep you posted on that. But they are still pushing to bring us into the past even more. Speaking of which, South Carolina on Wednesday became the nation's only state without a woman on its Supreme Court. A development that comes after Republicans have been really scrutinizing the court that we're just talking about, having narrowly struck down the conservative state's abortion ban last month. So after that happened, some Republicans were kind of wringing their hands like, hey, wait a minute. This is our state. This is what we want. What do you mean this thing's unconstitutional? Aren't you on our side? We've seen that nationally with the Supreme Court seemingly becoming more political as far as the justices ruling on things that have been precedent for a long, long time. And it's hard not to think it's politically motivated, and obviously the politicians that put those folks in there, that was their goal. But, justices sometimes can refrain from personal politics, and they're supposed to when making decisions. But it hasn't seemed that way with this most recent addition of the court. So you can see why, maybe Republicans in this state were thinking, well, aren't you going to do the thing, that we want? Isn't that how this works? So there's been some scrutiny on that. And I'm sure this decision to deny the petition isn't going to help. But now, hey, it's an all male high court. Not a single woman is serving on the Supreme Court any longer. And as I said, uh, we are the nation's only state that doesn't have at least one woman on the court. So, how did we get to this point? The Republican-led legislature chose Judge Gary Hill to replace the High Court's lone female justice, Kay Hearn, who had reached the court's retirement age, and who actually wrote the leading opinion in that 3-2 ruling overturning the state's 2021 abortion ban that we were just talking about. Her departure and the abortion ruling have led to some discussions over gender diversity in the courts and the merits of South Carolina's current judicial selection system, which is actually fairly unique. In most states, voters or the governor take the lead in choosing who sits on state courts. South Carolina, along with Virginia, are the only states in the country where lawmakers have almost complete control over filling the bench. So there's been some scrutiny over that. Oh, maybe the gut and Henry McMaster even said he wants to be more involved. So maybe we'll see that. There's no way they're going to put it in the voters' hands because they know it won't go the way they want it to in that scenario. Not all the time, anyway. And tensions over this really heated up back on January 25th during a floor speech by State Senator Sandy Sen. She is a Charleston Republican, and she accused House Republicans of forcing the two women out. There was two women nominees. They dropped out, didn't really give any explanation, and that left the lone person, Gary Hill, a man, now on the Supreme Court here in the state, and no women are on it now because of that. So the state senator Sen said that the House Republicans forced the two women out after holding informal polls that supposedly showed that neither would win. House Speaker Merle Smith denied those allegations of any kind of premature pledging of who people would vote for in a statement to the Post and Courier. So very interesting, an accusation from within their own party that something wasn't right. Regardless if that's true or not, we are now the only state in the nation without a woman on the Supreme Court. So, again, step back. And yet another step back. Despite these abortion ban rulings that I just mentioned, denying a rehearing when it was ruled that the abortion ban was unconstitutional. Despite that, there are dueling abortion bans going on right now in the South Carolina House and Senate as Republican lawmakers approach a familiar standstill. That's right. You probably remember, although Henry McMaster signed that so-called Fetal Heartbeat Bill into law in 2021, and it was triggered into law after Roe v. Wade was essentially overturned. Even though that was working its way through the courts, because after it was once that went into effect, there were lawsuits. There was a hold put on it. It was eventually ruled to be unconstitutional. Despite not knowing the future, they had a bunch of different bills and proposals last year, just trying to push through some kind of abortion ban. But there was basically the party got fractured into mostly two sides, some that wanted more extreme measures, some that wanted less extreme. They wanted some exceptions and things. And it looks like we're heading right back to that. So the Senate's version, which passed just honestly like maybe 30 minutes ago, and I've been recording now for like 20 minutes. So I, I don't have some of these details may have changed, but essentially their version of the bill um, was going to be a 12-week ban. Physicians would also be required to document their medical rationale for determining the existence of a fatal fetal anomaly or a risk to the patient's health or life. So there were some exceptions, but yeah, physicians were going to be required to document the rationale for going along with those exceptions. So that's essentially what the Senate bill was looking like. There may have been some minor changes. I'll update you on Monday if there were any. Meanwhile, on the House side, their Judiciary Committee on Tuesday approved a ban from conception. So not even 6 weeks like the so-called fetal heartbeat bill was. This one's conception, with exceptions for rape, incest, fatal fetal anomaly, and the patient's health and life. So similar to the Senate version, but instead of saying you have up to 12 weeks for any reason to get an abortion, theirs is saying you can't. The moment there's conception, that's it. No abortion unless it's for those exceptions. So while the House proposal would not prosecute someone for seeking an abortion, one Republican said medical officials could lose their medical license for improperly approving one. So that's another thing that differentiates the two bills. We'll see what happens. Clearly, the House has its sights in one direction. The Senate's is a little different. And will they come together and agree to one single bill? We shall see. So while South Carolina continues to lead from behind and here in this country, Chick-fil-A is trying to maybe go to the future. That's right. They're testing out some plant-based food as that type of suggestion is picking up steam around the country. People are asking for more plant-based things as there's been studies and people saying that that's a more healthy way to live and better things to eat are plants. So what is Chick-fil-A up to? They announced on Thursday that they will begin testing their first plant-forward entree, as they called it. It'll be the Chick-fil-A cauliflower sandwich. They are going to test this in 3 markets, and one of those markets is Charleston. So that's right, you will be able to try one of these out. The sandwich is made from a fillet cut from a whole cauliflower and is honestly, if you see the picture, which you can on holycitycenter.com, it looks exactly like, or not exactly, but it looks extremely similar to the original Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. You know, it honestly looks, if someone handed that to me, I may not think anything was up. I might, before biting into it, go, no, this looks like a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. Yeah, okay. Uh, you know, you know how sometimes pictures, especially for press releases and things, don't always live up to expectations in reality. So we'll see. But from the pictures I saw, I was pretty impressed how they made it look like a real chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. So starting on Monday, that's this Monday, February 13th, Chick-fil-A will be testing out these sandwiches here in the Charleston area. Just in case you're wondering, the other markets are Denver and North Carolina's like Greensboro Triad region. So if you are in any of those markets, and I suspect most of you are in the Charleston market, um, in all likelihood, starting on Monday, one of whatever your local Chick-fil-A is should have that available to you if you are interested in giving it a shot. The restaurant did recommend of course, using their Chick-fil-A app to check or call the store in advance to make sure they are participating. So I would imagine most of the pretty busy ones, which are really all of them, we'll be testing it out. I would be surprised if some in this area are not. So, ending with a little bit of different news, despite the run of not so fun stories, whether it's tragedies happening abroad, that Murdaugh murder case, which obviously is centered around a double murder, and then, as usual, our legislature and politicians in the state just doing their best to give us some of the worst. Just nothing changes. Someone, I think it was Spencer Wetmore, who is a representative for the James Island area. I believe she was the one, when talking about the abortion bill in the South Carolina House, that just felt like it was Groundhog Day. Like, how many times are we going to try this? How many times are you going to push forth these things that continually are shot down either within your own party because y'all can't agree, or the state Supreme Court deems unconstitutional? Like, how many more times? There's so many more things going on in this state. And these are the things they choose to focus on. I feel like I say that stuff a lot. But you know what? It's the weekend. Maybe, just maybe, politics can take the back seat as we enjoy our weekend, clear our minds, think about the good stuff, have some fun, and then get back to it on Monday. I want to thank you all for listening. Please review this podcast, rate it. That helps a lot as far as spreading the podcast to new folks. You can also subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the show, since we're coming out 3 times a week now. And I hope you're enjoying that new format. I've received a couple compliments and I appreciate it. Hope it's still interesting and you're still enjoying it. I also want to thank Lindsay Marie Collins of LMC Sound System for producing this episode, and Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode. While you got some time this weekend, in addition to checking out Holy City Center, you can hop on over to patreon.com/Holy City Center. Sign up for one of those tiers to help support the site, the podcast, and everything we do here in Holy City Center land. You can also browse the Holy City Center store. Go to holycitycenter.com/shop. There's hats, koozies, and some other merchandise that you can purchase. That also helps out. Again, enjoy your weekend. Until Monday, good night and good luck.